And so that's how it stands, and that's how Mr. Obama's legacy looks. President Obama's legacy looks not very good at this point. And history doesn't lie. The journalists lie. They you know they're basically, they say that President Reagan was great because he supported tax cuts. Well, of course, that was the thing he did wrong, because that created the deficit. And of course, that's partisan politics, is what tax cuts are. Economic growth is not from tax cuts. Mr. President Reagan had a bad economy because mass immigration was occurring. They can put a good face on it, and the people don't know. The people who are doing better don't realize that the other people are suffering, of course. And so you had Morning in America, which is what they called the 1984 campaign, and said, hey, the economy is great and all, but it wasn't great. It was growing, but wages were stagnant, of course. And we had a trade deficit, we had a budget deficit, we had ghetto blasters and drive-by shootings is what we had during the 1980s, as I recall. And the black people were in poverty, of course, they still are. And so that's not why President Reagan is great. He's great because he opposed the Soviet Union, and he did the defense buildup. That's what he did. He spent a lot of money on defense and outspent the Soviet Union. Even though our wages were stagnant, we were still better off than the Soviet Union because they had a Marxist command economy where the government controlled all of the economy. They owned all the businesses, controlled all the wages, and it didn't grow. And they ran out of money. And President George Herbert Walker Bush was vice president during President Reagan's 2 terms. He was also a Cold Warrior. And that's why President Reagan's great, though, because the Cold War, he essentially won the Cold War. And President George Herbert Walker Bush won the first Persian Gulf War. The Persian Gulf War won. And President Clinton, of course, he bombed Serbia, and he conducted Operation Desert Fox. But President George Walker Bush invaded Iraq, which is a big mistake, and he sent 20,000 troops to invade Afghanistan. The Powell Doctrine says overwhelming force, of course, and 20,000 troops didn't do the job there, and they ended up they increased the troops some. Then they had a surge there of about 140,000, and that pushed back Al-Qaeda, of course, but then it's come down since then, and Al-Qaeda is hiding up in the mountains there, and they're waiting to come down. And what we should do is reduce their capabilities, and we should leave behind a contingent of 20,000 troops, not 10,000. And so you see President Obama, and I told you what he's done. President Bush also passed a big tax cut. He passed a tax cut, and then they promptly lost Congress, is what they did. And of course, that's how it went, and President Clinton passed a big tax increase. And then he pushed a big health care bill, but it failed. Then he lost Congress. And then he bombed Serbia, and then he bombed Saddam in Operation Desert Fox, destroying Saddam's nuclear weapons program. And then he left. And so President Clinton doesn't look as bad, does he, as compared to President George W. Bush, and President Osama doesn't. President Osama, I'm sorry, President Obama. Osama's not the president. Obama's the president. Obama doesn't look too strong. He just passed a big healthcare bill, spent a lot of money. Then he bombed Libya, and he got Gaddafi, which doesn't really change too much. They just don't have a strong leader now. There's probably someone there, and it's more of an oligarchy rather than a dictatorship. And he got Osama, but that's just one man. That's not Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda is 50,000 soldiers there. Bombers. That's what they are. And there are a lot of problems festering. There's Iran reaching for nuclear weapons. North Korea has become a nuclear power. And ISIS is festering, and Al-Qaeda is bombing Pakistan, and Yemen is being bombed by Al-Qaeda. And so you see President Obama has all these problems here that he's not handling. And President Clinton, he handled the North Korean crisis correctly at the time. Senator Nunn came to the rescue. And that's how it went. And so there's President Obama's legacy up to now. He hasn't got much, does he? He even has low approval ratings. He has low approval ratings as well. And the Republicans should definitely hold the House. They're going to hold the House, and the Senate's up for grabs. And President Obama has 2 years left, and that's how it looks. And so who's going to be the next president? Well, if Al Gore is interested, I'd support him. And then there's Jeb Bush, of course. Then there's Hillary. He's a little smallish. But I don't know. Hillary would be better than Rand Paul, I think. I think Rand Paul wants to run. He's more like, I don't know what he's like, but he just seems like a lightweight, or he just seems a little smallish. Hillary would probably be better than him. Then there's Mario Cruz or whoever. Chris Christie, he might be the vice presidential candidate. Chris Christie, he might get picked. But as far as Jeb Bush goes, he was a gov for 2 terms. So and he's seen the scene. He watched W there, and he watched HW there. He saw them both there. He saw what they did, and he's smart about foreign affairs, though. Starting with relations with Putin and immigration. He's come on over to our side. Immigration, forget that one. Well, it's kind of say that I'm not going to pull the job there, and I'm just waiting around to make my statements on immigration, nuclear strategy, and foreign affairs. And it's